Round 1 of the Six Nations 2024 in the books. And what a round. So much to get into. I think for every single team there are interesting storylines after this weekend, which is always the case. It's what makes the Six Nations so brilliant, in that the narratives after week 1 are so fascinating to follow. The teams that have lost, it completely changes the complexion of where they now are in the championship. And for the teams that have won, it's now about kicking on. So loads to get into in this video. Welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, my name's Alfie. Great to have you with us, and thanks for clicking on the video. And if by the end of this video I've earned your subscription, then even better. Like the video as well, but most importantly, comment down below. Who's your team? What did you make of their opening weekend? Or just generally, what did you make of the opening weekend of the championship? Let me know. Let's start off on Friday night. It feels like ages ago now, but it was the opening game of the weekend. France against Ireland, all the hype, all the build-up. Be honest, who saw that coming? I don't think anyone did. I think there were people out there that predicted that Ireland would get the victory. I wasn't one of them. I thought France would. But I don't think anyone saw it being that one-sided, because even though it was a record score for Ireland in France, a record victory for Ireland over France, it could have been more. That's the most amazing thing about that performance and Andy Farrell's side, and the way in which they have picked themselves up after the World Cup is impressive. I suppose maybe shouldn't be shocking. We didn't know what it was going to look like. There's always going to be an uncertainty before the start of a new tournament off the back of a World Cup. But even so, it was brilliant from Ireland. A classic Andy Farrell Ireland team in a lot of ways, in that incredibly well coached, executed it brilliantly, and they're just so good at focusing on the now. It was that game, and after the Six Nations, maybe we'll talk about it in this video, after that game, there's discussions of, are they now going to be the first team to do back-to-back Grand Slams in the history of the Six Nations? Are they on for another title? For Farrell and co, it's about the here and now. It's about next up, and next up is Italy in Dublin. I think they're really good at being able to narrow in their focus on the task at hand and going week to week. All teams always talk about doing that. Some teams you think are better at it than others. And when this Ireland team talk about it, I absolutely believe in them. Massively impressive. I mentioned it on Friday night in my reaction video. Joe McCarthy came in and was exceptional, but all across that team there were players that outperformed their opposite number in a French team packed full of quality, and they were just very, very good indeed. Let me know what you made of that Ireland performance and where they go from here into the rest of the Six Nations, which whilst they will focus on here and now, week in, week out, they're huge favourites for. Is there anywhere along the line they could slip up? It's hard to see. Based purely on the evidence of this weekend, it's really hard to see who's going to be able to compete with Ireland. Maybe Scotland, if they're able to replicate their opening 40 minutes for an entire 80 minutes, but even then, and I'll get on to Scotland, I have some concerns about that team and their ability to do that. Before we move on to some of the other teams, France. France, oh France. How much of this is a World Cup hangover? How much of this is to do with the absence of Antoine Dupont? Or how much of this is to do with just simply how good Ireland were? And we can't quite judge them yet. We're going to have to wait to see what they look like this weekend. That task all of a sudden of going to Murrayfield that's a horrible game, I think, for France to have off the back of this one. Because Scotland will be up for it. Scotland will have had their minds concentrated in that if Scotland had blown Wales away for the full 80 minutes, let's just say for argument's sake, they'd put 50 points on them, they'd nilled them, it would have almost changed the feeling. In a sense, for a Scotland team, it's a good thing that they did have that stumble in the second half, because it means complacency can't kick in ahead of facing France, but the crowd will be up for it. They'll know how big that game is in the context of the championship for this Scotland team. They win this weekend, they'll have a great chance of being in with a shout of winning it as they get towards the end of it, which they've never been in before. That is a tough game for France to pick themselves up off the canvas and go again. I might be a fool. I would back this French team to be able to do it. So I look at this side and it's not a bad team. I can't believe that they have become a bad team overnight almost, off the back of the World Cup, going into a new season. They've got massive bodies in that team. They're physical. It is a squad of players that are still relatively young. Fabien Galtier spoke about it in the build-up to the game, that he felt a lot of this team would still be there when they get to the next World Cup. It is a relatively youthful side, despite the fact that a lot of them feel like they've been there for a long time. The likes of Gregory Aldrit, who's 26, for example. So I'm backing France to still be good, but they have some big questions to answer. And how big a psychological dent has the World Cup been? And I suppose, will Friday night been? To lose in that manner in France. This France team do not lose on home soil often. They certainly don't lose to that sort of scoreline and be dominated in that way. Every area of the game, really, Ireland were better than them. So fascinating going into week 2. Get on to England and Italy, second game of the weekend, least interesting game of the opening round, but not without intrigue. Italy, I think, promising. They put some really good stuff together, the Italians. Some of their tries in that first half, they took expertly well. It was off the back of some ropey defence from England, but even so, they took it well. And you just feel, can this Italian team combine the pragmatism of the new coach, Gonzalo Quesada, with the attack-minded, attack-from-anywhere approach of Kieran Crowley in the previous regime? It looks like they still have that attacking flair in their team. I feel like it is going to be an Italian team that, whilst they might not beat every team in the Six Nations, they can score points on them. And then if you combine that with a team that can be better defensively and keep things tight when they need to a little bit more, are they going to be able to get a result this championship? We've seen it before with Italian teams where there's promise there, there's expectations there for them to deliver and to be better, and they still end up with 5 defeats from 5 at the end of a Six Nations. But I think we did see enough in that team to give us hope that they're going to be able to cause someone an upset in this Six Nations. That's the hope anyway. I think all neutrals will be hoping for that. From an England perspective, look, it wasn't great, but as I said in my video after the game, I felt pretty positive. And actually, the interesting thing was, I said in my video that I felt fairly positive. I was expecting to have loads of comments, negative comments about England, who are once again frustrated about the manner of the performance and things like that. Hasn't been too much of that. And even reading a lot of the newspaper reports and pundits and things like that, it feels to me like it's generally quite a positive reaction to that England performance, despite the fact that it's their narrowest margin of victory against Italy ever. And if you consider that for a moment, England's narrowest margin of victory against Italy, yet we're still feeling fairly positive, I think that's a reflection of the obvious things they're trying to do in attack, and clearly in defence how they're trying to shift things as well. Now that defence let them down a couple of occasions. When they got it wrong, it led to Italian tries, which is a concern, but you can see what they're trying to do. And I think for a long time, England fans just wanted a team that you could believe in and you could see what they were trying to do. Over the last 2 years, they've struggled to see that. Maybe we are going to now start to see that. Plus 5 debutants. It was a new team, new combinations in midfield, in the back row, in the back 3. So loads to work on still, but overall positive. Heading into Wales at home, it's interesting. Let's see how they go. Let's see if this is a Twickenham crowd that is now a bit more behind that team as well. I'll be at Twickenham on Saturday, so looking forward to it. Let's finish things off with the final game of the weekend and the most bonkers game we've seen in the Six Nations for years in terms of the comeback. Scotland 27-0 up, Wales 4 unanswered tries, 1 point in it, and they end up losing it. I think I said in my reaction video actually, Scotland won, but you kind of feel disappointed. Wales lost, but will have a huge sense of pride and a platform to go forward on. And Warren Gatland has said after the game, possibly the worst performance in that opening 40 minutes he's ever had as a coach. I mean, Wales were awful. I don't really know what the game plan was. They got no front football. They put no pace in attack. They were passing it back to Sam Costello in the pocket, 20 metres behind the game line to kick it forward with no real kick chase. It all was just aimless. And combined with that was a Scotland team that, given the ball, getting on the front foot, can cut teams apart and look very, very good as well, even though they still left a few opportunities out there. So where do Wales go? It is a platform. I still think this is a team that is developing. But I suppose from a Welsh fan's perspective, similar to what I was just saying with England. They showed something that the fans can get behind. It isn't all down in the dumps. They have to get better. They are going to have some big challenges in this Six Nations with what is still an inexperienced and youthful team, but they showed something. And actually, have they showed the style of play that Wales need to implement moving forward, which is perhaps moving away from the traditional style that has been successful under Gatland. Rather than being physical and outgrafting teams, it's injecting pace into the game. In that second half, they got on the front foot, they injected pace into the game, and they were able to trouble Scotland. Plus then, Scotland gave away penalties, they could kick to the corner, they could score through the driving maul. Is that how Wales have to approach it? And particularly if you look at it, Sam Costello went off. Let's presume for a moment he misses the England game. If you go Ioan Lloyd at 10, Thomas Williams was so good, I think he'll start at 9. Do you just take on this England team? Take them on, make them uncomfortable, try and turn them, put pace into the game. Maybe that's the approach that they will now go down. And I think that is maybe off the back of this, the platform Wales have possibly given to themselves. But also there's no getting away from the fact that you look now, so they've lost to Scotland at home, they've got England away, they then face Ireland and France. It still could come down, particularly if they lose to England this weekend, you could be looking at coming down to the final weekend at home against Italy, possible wooden spoon, needing a win, the pressure then on the team. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I can't help but look at the fixtures and not think of that. Finishing off with Scotland, as I've said already, this game coming up this weekend, huge for them. So important, I think, that they get a result. They get a result, then you're looking at it and saying they could be in with a shout in this championship. Ireland are still going to be favourites. Scotland would still be underdogs when it comes to facing Ireland, but they put themselves in that conversation, I think, or give themselves a great chance of being at the end of it with a chance of winning it. They can't get complacent, but maybe it was the sort of warning that they would have needed to prevent that happening again. And if it's going to happen, it's better it happens when you're 27-0 up than in a different game in this tournament and you're not able to hold on for a win. And actually, it's probably the kind of game that previous Scotland teams would have ended up losing. When the momentum was all against them, they had players sent to the sin bin, they were leaking penalties. So they got through it ultimately. They got through it, they move on, and they go now against a France side that are looking to bounce back. And a French side actually that have qualities that I think Scotland will struggle with. I mentioned at the start of the video the reason I still have doubts about this Scotland team and their ability to win the Six Nations, for example, which would involve probably beating Ireland and France, or certainly one of them. I still worry about them in the tight five. It's what I said in the preview video. That's still my area of concern for this Scotland team. But those are my general thoughts then on a Sunday evening on the opening weekend of the Six Nations. Where are all the teams then? You've seen them all play once. What did you make of it, and what did you make of your team? Can anyone get close to competing with Ireland? On the basis of what we saw on Friday, it seems unlikely. I think Ireland would have to drop off a fair few levels for someone to be able to trouble them. But maybe an away day, things go against you, red cards, that sort of thing maybe. But they were awesome, and loads of other interesting stuff to talk about as well. So thanks for clicking on the video. Thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit thumbs up on the video. Give it that little boost, support the algorithm, and let's get it far and wide, as many views as possible. We're into week 2. Pretty much, anyway. This is Sunday night. We're almost into week 2, and I'll see you in the next one.